What do you want to know, son? Ask me, I'll tell you anything.
So.
But if you ask me the wrong question, I may have to kill you. What do you want to know?
How old are you and how much do you weigh?
Okay, no. I'm going to give you a lesson on lying.
No, I mean...
That's pretty funny.
It's just, organic conversation that we normally have. So one thing I've really turned to you for is like spiritual knowledge. You've given me great explanations of like how to like really digest all that stuff, because the only experiences I've ever had were really like getting thrown into it with like you and the groups that you were part of.
Yeah.
I mean, you just got back from Egypt. We did the Bali thing, and that's what really introduced me to spirituality. And I was like, the whole time I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm just gonna go and fuck around. And then once I actually showed up and like participated, I was like, my God, how the fuck do I explain this?
Right.
Like, intangible sort of experiences that just shattered my reality.
Right. Well, when that happens, usually I tell people to reverse engineer, because they already have the questions in them. We always have these ideas of how we perceive life, or spirituality for that matter. And so when you have an experience that happens, you're like, whoa, how do I fit that into the realm of my personality and my lifestyle and how I think and my vernacular, how I speak? So then you just reverse engineer that. So you've already had the experience. So take the experience and then find out what that experience means. And that's where I know people are social media and all that, but Google is a great resource because there's lots of information on Google. I'm not saying it's all real, but it's a great way to find out aspects of teachings, because there are so many teachings on there that are texts that are really ancient, or even really smart people who've done all the investigation, whether they're like I went to Egypt, Egyptologists or spiritualists or whatever the case may be.
Sure, there's a lot to feed off of. People who have already like done some pioneering.
Yes.
And
they've already answered some of those bigger questions that have come up through ancient text. But I like to approach life with no preconceived idea. So I come up with the question. The question is, how does this work? Like we've talked about reincarnation, we've talked about energetic fields and things that come up. So I come up with my own answer.
Yeah, you don't believe in reincarnation.
No, well, I don't believe in anything. I come up with my own answer, and then I reverse engineer it. I find out what supports my idea of how that works, because really, everything in life is conjecture, right? So everything comes from a place of knowing. So we have this idea, we have this thought or this question, and a knowing comes in. Where that knowing comes from, there are many answers to that.
It can be intuition, it could be knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't know exactly where that comes from, whether you pray to a god or you meditate, or if you believe in this dogma or that dogma. So then you come in and you answer those questions for yourself, and then it's more rooted in reality for you than it is when you follow a path to where they ask the question and then they answer the question for you. So then you take that in internally and you're like, okay, I have this belief system, right? Because somebody said something and it made so much sense to me. They said the question of, where did life begin? Okay, I never thought about where did life begin. And then they tell you all the answers and you say, yeah, that sounds really true. I believe that. So now you're dealing in absolutes. So an absolute is different than a universal truth.
That's true. That's I definitely understand that. Yeah.
Yes, but not all people believe that.
And how would you, for people who've maybe never heard that term, what is a universal truth?
So an absolute truth is it's something that is known and proven until it's proven differently. Perfect example, flat Earth. People absolutely knew the Earth was flat because they could see the horizon, right?
Or the Earth was the center of the solar system.
Or the Earth was the center. Perfect example. So until technology caught up with the answer to that question, then there's a universal truth. That does not change. Absolutes change with knowledge. Universal truths never change because it's universal. It is just the way it is.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for the universal truths in life, but we have a lot of absolutes to get through.
Right.
So what are your absolutes?
Right.
So give me
Yeah.
an example of one of yours, and then we'll talk about that.
Of an absolute truth?
Yeah, something that you believe right now. Let's unpack that.
That's really hard to know what's like, you know, it's so much of reality is up for debate.
Right.
And I would say an absolute truth would probably be like, I don't know,
It's always hard when the interviewer
well, like,
gets interviewed.
yeah, right. Well, applying love and compassion to every scenario will serve you.
Okay, so you think that's an absolute or universal?
I do think that's universal because if you live and operate from that state, you're more likely, I guess, to make good decisions rather than operating out of anger or something along those lines.
So let's talk about that as an absolute. So an absolute is love and compassion. You would never kill, right? That's a loving and compassionate thing. But when you think of someone who is dying on a battlefield or dying of a terrible disease,
Or trying to protect your family.
or someone who, trying to protect yourself, or someone who chooses to die because of disease or any of those pain. I mean, pain is like, whoa, that's a big one. So love and compassion is love and compassion helping them die or helping them live. Where do you draw the line? So that makes it an absolute, but not absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know,
who draws the lines for love and compassion, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess, man, universals are, I remember like studying philosophy in college, and that was like something we talked about a lot, was like universal truths and whatnot. And that is heavily debated.
Well, sure, because it comes from
Unless it's like, 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah, but that comes from a limited reality. When universal truths are in question, comes from a limited reality. Like saying we never went to the moon. Some people believe we never went to the moon, but we have film that we went to the moon. We have film that the Earth is round. But then they say, well, I don't believe that. So that becomes in question, even though the person who was there, who took the film, or who shows the film, absolutely, ultimately
unequivocally knows this is
that it's
absolutely
true.
the way.
So
this
then
is
you can see how the dichotomy of personalities plays in reality, right?
Right.
So then you become the person who chooses the reality as a person who's open to reality. So when you're open to reality, you ask the question and see what comes in. And
This is like so applicable to politics today.
Oh yeah, I know. It's hard not to think about it because that's at the forefront of your thoughts. Everybody's forefront of their brain right now is everything has to do with politics.
Well,
But
it's just a lot of stuff going on in the world, and that's a big issue right now is getting people to actually like work together.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge and hopefully try to mend.
Yeah, but the people who have other intent are working together as well. So can you look at both sides? So we're talking about love and compassion, right? So they feel love and compassion, even though for you it may not seem that way because you're like, wow, that's an antithesis of love and compassion.
Right.
But they have a belief system that they want to get means to an end, and any killing someone because they're in pain, a means to an end, regardless of what they have to do to get there, going to war. So it's a dichotomy of like, how do we rationalize that in our everyday world, right?
Yeah. One thing I've always loved is like how you have one of the most open minds of anybody I know, and because you challenge like things that I would be like, oh, well, I read this or something. And
Right,
you're
right,
like,
right.
okay, well, let's unpack that.
Exactly.
And then I'm like, okay, I need to rethink this whole thing.
Right.
Like, you really get me to critically think.
Yes, critical thinking is the most important thing. And, you know, they have that old saying, you never want to be the most interesting person in the room because you don't learn anything.
Right. Yeah. Being an observer
Yes.
is huge. And I've noticed
Yes.
because me when I was younger, I was a bit of a ADHD running around. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, I was the friend in the friends group. Like when we go out to restaurants and people would be putting their heads down, they're like, "Oh my God!" Like everybody was embarrassed for me. And then the older I got, the more I went into myself and started listening rather
Right.
than just what.
But then you learn compassion for yourself. When I work with people who have had issues with their father or their mother or, you know, things that have happened in their life and they have trauma, I always ask the question, how old was your parent or your aunt or whoever that other person was at that time? And when they say, well, that person was, say, 25. And I said, well, how old are you? And they said, well, I'm 45. Can you put yourself in the place of a 25-year-old and how they acted at that time? Not saying what they did was correct, but being able to come from a place of love and compassion. To be able to say, okay, wow, what you did was really fucked up. But to have that understanding, and what that does, it creates a healing for the person. Now you've changed the absolute, right? I absolutely hated them because of what they did. This absolutely happened to me, and now I have this absolute of this feeling where I can't move forward in life. I PTSD or any of those things that manifest from that one thing or many things that happen at a particular point in your life. So then you come to this other point where you're like, wow, you know, I really am in charge. So the ultimate truth is I am in charge. And what that person did at that time was on them, and you were a participant in that, whatever that is, and I'm not trying to gloss over any of that, but now you have come to a place of love and compassion for yourself. We can make true, deep changes in your life. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy because that would be foolhardy.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done.
Yeah. That would be foolhardy. And plus to dismiss people's true feelings. But to be able to take that kind of information in and to transmute it into something else. And I was just in a session with friends, and we talked about unbending intent, and everybody had their idea of what unbending intent is. I'd like for you to tell me what you think it is, and then we'll have a discussion about that.
Unbending intent. I guess that would be an intention so strong no opinion or environmental influence could sway that intention.
Right, but doesn't that feel rigid?
I guess that's not very bendy. Not very flexible.
Right. But I mean, that is what most people think about unbending intent. But if we're going to talk about spiritual realms, so having an unbending intent is having an intuition. I have an intuition about what I think is going on, right? So remember we talked about reverse engineering. What is the question? So I have this idea of what I want to know, and I have this intention. And then I take hyper-focus and put unbending intent on that intuition to find out what the answer is, or to make something happen. When you see people who are very successful have this. They have their intuition and their knowing of what they want to do. I want to be able to feed the world. I mean, it could be that big or something so small that I want, you know, I want to have this little business of la la la. So they put hyper-focus on that. So when you put hyper-focus on unbending intent for the intuition that you have, that you think something should come or manifest from that, all that energy goes out into the universe to make it easy, and all the universe colludes with the unbending intent and brings it in to make that happen. And that's manifestation. Most people think it's just like, you know, bam, 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 manifest. No, it's all about your intention. So that changes the dynamic from being a wishful thinking, and it can't come from ego. It has to be true, you know, true to form, true to love, true to compassion, and that unbending intent can happen. Now, if that becomes thwarted, it can become sorcery, where it becomes intention for bad. So now you come to the question, is there good and evil? Is there good and bad? What's good today could be evil tomorrow. And,
It's not absolute.
Yeah,
it is absolute. Well, it's
well,
an
that
absolute.
is absolute.
Yeah.
It's not universal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we know that through history. We have history
Right,
to
yeah.
look back on to say, wow, they thought that this was an absolute truth, and come to find out it's not. I mean, all you have to do is look at race wars and slavery and all those things that they really believed aspects of the human race that were not true.
Right. We're the supreme race.
Exactly. And all the evil that they did with that intent, that
Yeah.
unbending intent.
Horrific results of
I know.
that intent.
So you have two sides of the coin there. So again, we come back to good and evil. Is that good or is that evil? Do we assign good and evil to things? Because again, isn't that an absolute?
Yeah.
I mean, we would think that we know what evil is, right?
Yeah.
It just seems obvious.
It seems cut and dry.
It seems
pretty
cut
black
and
and
dry.
white. Yeah.
Unless you're a Buddhist, and walking on bugs and killing bugs is like evil.
Yeah.
Where we do that without any thought whatsoever. So it's a gradated scale.
Yeah. Everything's on a spectrum.
It's on a spectrum, and it's really hard to come to a consensus or drive home a point that someone else isn't moving that point.
Yeah.
So the point moves all the time.
That's a kind of a good way of saying, or not maybe saying, but like it just makes me think like why it's important to stay open-minded.
Yes.
This is not definite,
Yeah, it comes back to the question. You would never want to have the information and look for the question. You want to have the question and look for the information. Because then you're going to come from a point of already wanting to know, as opposed to having someone telling you the way it is. And you'll know, intuitively, you'll know. You feel it in your body. You're talking about intuition, right? We talked about that before with intent. Intuition uses all five senses. You feel it, you see it, you hear it, and you speak about it, and then you act on it. So acting on it, that's karma. So we've talked about karma. How I don't necessarily believe in karma. I think it's an action word. And all that karma means to me, not to anyone else, to me, is that you have a thought or an intention, and then you act on it. And that's karma, because you have a result. And I know people say karma is not cause and effect. But if you don't believe in reincarnation, then how can you believe in karma? Thinking that you come back and have to live through all these lives over and over and over. So that's where I'm at right now. That's my question, and that's my absolute right now. But there's no way for me to know the ultimate unless I die, and I don't even know if that's even it. Because if something happened after I die, why don't I remember it? And some people say they do, but what if they don't? What if it's just a memory, a latent memory? And what if it's from another timeline that has nothing to do with them? Or a dream? Who knows? I mean, these etherical questions that are asked and answered, that's so arrogant. The question should always be asked, but they should never be answered, because they are just absolutes.
Right. It just needs to be explored. And then that's honestly like why
Exactly.
I love having these conversations with you guys. It's like we just spontaneous, thought-provoking sort of exploration. And I like, even the people watching this, I don't want them to watch us and go, "Oh, that's the answer," and stick to it. It's like, no, food for thought.
Yeah.
Digest it, process it,
Right.
draw your own conclusions.
Right.
Like, please draw your own conclusions.
Right.
That's huge.
And they evolve over time, and they evolve with age.
Yeah.
How you feel when you're young. We're going back to this person who had trauma, how that person felt when they were young, and how they treated you when they were young, 25, and how you feel about it now that you're 45. and they're either an old person or they're dead and gone, that's your choice. That situation has already happened. Now you are creating your own karma through holding on to that thought form. I call it a thought form or a belief system. And that happens a lot with religion. We hold on to those belief systems that if we do certain things that we're going to go to hell, or we're going to be damned, or people aren't going to like us, or however that shows up. So we have these belief systems about ourselves. And then those things, they warp the spiritual field so that now you're not true. You're not true. True meaning straight. Not, any other meaning other than being straight, being connected from the top to the bottom in a straight line.
Well, do you think there's like a certain, like maybe like a few guidelines you could give to like kind of help people live in that state?
Well, one of the easiest things, and your dad talks about it all the time, is to be in nature. And nature heals, and that's true. And being with yourself in nature heals. And also being kind to yourself, learning to love yourself, you will heal. Because those little holes that we have that we say we don't like about ourselves, whether it's you're getting old and you're getting wrinkled, or you're getting flabby, or you're getting fat, or you're too thin, and there's
Sure.
never a balance. Even when it's perfection, it's never perfect.
Right.
So to be in nature, to be with yourself, and for myself, I meditate. Not everybody needs to meditate. Not everybody can meditate. And I understand that. But some people read. Some people sing. Some people listen to music. Driving through the desert. We happen to live in the desert. We're really lucky. We can drive through the desert. And that's so mind expanding because there are no boundaries in the desert.
Yeah.
It's like you can look so far. And I sometimes do that as homework for my clients. I say, just go outside and look to the horizon. So often we are going through life like this. We're either on our computer, on our phone, reading a book, doing our work, and we never see
Just
past that.
Bubble.
Yeah, it's a little bubble. So your life becomes myopic. It becomes very small. So if you go outside, take deep breaths, and you look in the distance, all of a sudden now you've expanded your mind. Depending on where you live, you can expand it as many as 20 miles, 30 miles. If you live on the top of a mountain, you might be able to say 100 miles. So you've expanded your perception that far. So, those are some of the easy, simple things to do.
Well, I think just what you're saying there is actually a great topic to touch on. It seems like closed-mindedness is very prominent now, and there's not much thought expansion. People will, associate themselves in one category or another, and then that's the way it is. That's the way I'm going to think. Can't sway my opinion.
Yeah.
Like what? Like how do you? Not like how you get other people to not think that way. How do we get ourselves anybody? Can anybody watching this,
Right. That's
kind of get out of that sort of tribalism, or just get to a more open-mindedness?
Yeah, that's being lazy. So you pick a path. It's like you hike through the forest, and you pick a path, and you only take that same path over and over and over and over, right? And that path becomes more and more furrowed and deeper and deeper and deeper, and then before you know it, you haven't seen anything but what you see on that path. So it's very myopic again, even though you're in the forest, right? And you have this opportunity to go this way or that way.
Well, how do you break away from that when there's algorithms online kind of dictating what you're being fed, and
Well, again,
how do you break it? How do you break the cycle?
Well,
What's the order of operations, would you say? Or could anybody go about, expanding their thought and thought provocation and, that sort of...
right, to open to other things.
Yeah.
To open to what is.
What's a good way to go about kind of shifting that mindset?
Well, again, it will come back to unbending intent. So decide if first you have to know that you have that mindset.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's a hard part.
So if you're in that mindset and you want to I mean, that's like being in a religious sect. So you decide I'm on this path, and anything separate from that is wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. So there are the walls.
Yeah.
So as long as you're behind the walls, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. I mean, of course, it's up to them to decide. I'm going to peek over the wall and see what's on the other side.
Right. That's the big thing going on nowadays is it's like, how can I get them to listen to me? And it's like, well, how can we get people to just open?
Right.
Open
Well,
up.
then you need to take that question and turn it around. How can I get them to listen to me? How can I get to listen? So you have to take that and point it the other way and say, I need to listen. Before I can make other people listen, I need to learn to listen. So, okay, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna see what else is out there.
Shut up. I'm just kidding.
Exactly, right? But seriously, so you have to take that question and turn it back. So now you start listening to what everyone else has to say. I don't agree with you. 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 Fine. All of a sudden, they'll be like, wow, that makes a little sense. Let me just pull that in a little more. Or you can stay on that path. And pretty soon that furrow is so deep, before you know it, you're buried, right? Because you walk in the same path enough, you dig in your own grave.
There's a lot of that going
And
around.
the wall gets higher and higher and higher. It gets harder and harder to look over the wall and see what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And then when you're on that path, you're like, wow, there's nothing here. It's just dirt. When it rains, it's mud, and it sucks. But on the other side, there's a meadow, and there's grass, and there's moss, and there's trees, and there's openness, and there's diversity. So many people are afraid of diversity.
Why? What do you think that is?
Um,
Maybe because it's
comfort.
unknown?
Yeah, because it's unknown.
The
and
unknown's
it's
not
scary.
comfortable.
And if you become myopic, close-minded in your life, then you want to stay where you feel safe. So where do you feel safe? With the same thing. You eat the same food, you do the same routine, you have the same job. And all of those things are okay, because you will live. You're born, you'll live, and you'll die, just like anybody else. But it's those time frames in between. What do you want to do? Do you want to be in discourse and chaos and unhappiness? Or do you want to be in a place where you have expansion and knowing and understanding? Whether it's your belief system or someone else's. I'm not saying you need to change what you believe. If you believe this, whatever that is, just be more open-minded about it. Find out more about it.
Don't consider it as a universal.
Right. That's called slavery.
Right. Yeah. Know it's subject to change. Know
Yes.
that those
Yes.
sort of things are subject to change.
Right.
And I think that's what's going on is a lot of people are like, nope, this is the way of the world.
Yeah.
You can't sway my opinion. Don't even try.
Right.
And it just becomes this just closed-minded,
It's like never changing your underwear.
black and white.
It's like never changing your underwear, and you get to live in your own shit.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
But it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, God, don't you ever want to have something new in your life?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to adopt that. You just wear the same underwear, and then before you know it, you're living in your own shit.
Right.
That is such a truth.
And it's so simple.
Such an absolute truth.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because there is, I don't know what the ultimate truth would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are deep conversations. And even though people think we're living in scary times, if you repeat it enough to enough people, you will make a pack of people who will repeat that back to you. And then you're in this, little echo chamber of, boy, this is going on, this is going on, this is going on. We are living an amazing life.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a fire, I have a glass of water, I'm being filmed, talking to my son. Potentiality is unlimited.
Yeah, and I mean, given where you guys started.
Yeah, well, just like anyone else.
A point of contrast.
Yeah, we were just young and worked hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, you and Dad both grew up in severe poverty.
No, I wouldn't say severe.
No?
No, that's not fair. Because we had family.
Okay. But yeah, you guys were definitely in poverty,
Yes.
though.
But when you think about people who don't even have the most basic things of family, or they don't have even possibility of where they're going to lay their head, that's where love and compassion comes in. And it's not necessarily that you have to worry about the world and worry about where everyone is or what your belief system is, whether you're worried that every alien is going to cross the border or all those aliens at the border could die. Those are both the same worries, but on different sides of the coin. So worry doesn't help. But if the more you expand your personal space, your personal heart, and your personal compassion, and that catches on to the next and the next and the next, and eventually, as a collective, it changes that dynamic. Because people who are the fundamental source, whether it's another country's leader or however far back that goes, to the border guard, to whatever,
Sure.
where they find love and compassion. But we're almost like ants on the earth, where we get this collective, what's the word I'm looking for? Energies. Mindset. Where everybody starts marching the same. And the first person who doesn't march the same, and they start moving a little different, and everybody's like, look what he's doing, this is wrong. And then, no, you don't understand. This is the way to go.
And often those are the people who are most important in history.
Exactly. And we don't know who those people are. And again, today they could be the worst, and tomorrow we'll find out they were the best. And, there are many belief systems, especially, in where we're living right now in 2020, is, we feel like it's always good versus evil. But it's not good versus evil.
It's everything lies on a spectrum.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just the motive behind it.
Yeah,
Do
intention.
I think that everyone on one side
motive
wants
and intention.
wants to wipe everyone out and do all this, and the other side wants to give everyone everything free? No, of course not. But those are just schisms of how we measure.
Sure.
Because we want to, whatever you believe in, you're going to tilt that scale to the side so that you can back up what you have to say. And that brings us back to, what is the question? What is the question you want to know? And being more proactive to find the answer for yourself. And that is true knowledge and knowing. Someone telling you something in your ear is not knowledge and knowing. That's telephone. That game telephone.
And a lot of people are mixing those two up.
Yes. So you want to take that away, and you want to say, what is the question? Whatever that question is. And then find out, reverse engineer it, and find the things that fit to answer that question for you.
My question is to know the right question.
Yeah. Let me see. My answer to that would be, you need to question more.
It's a vicious circle.
It is a vicious circle, because once you find answers, and then within those answers are more questions.
Yeah.
So that's.
But that's good. Thought provocation is what it's all about.
Yes, it is. And then you come from a place where you aren't the most important person in the room, and then you can hear other things that are going on, and then you could. It's like Tinder. Isn't it Tinder where you swipe left or right?
Yeah.
That's your life. You go like, yep, nope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll be able to have discernment. Most people don't have discernment. They can't discern between what they believe and what someone else believes.
Yeah, I can say I've been guilty of it before, is when I'm making a judgment call or like trying to discern something, I'm thinking, what would other people think, rather than
That's emotional.
than just like my own true truth.
Yeah, that's emotional.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon either, because we are human beings. And beings means you exist in action. So those things happen all the time. Everyone does it. If anyone says they don't, they're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is. And plus, we have different emotions that arise depending on the situation and what our thought forms, belief systems are, and which creates triggers in the body, which creates actions on the outside of the body. Mm-hmm. Whether someone says something that, hurt you when you were a child, and they might say something and you're like, oh, and you feel it here, and then you say something hateful back. And you're like, wow, why did that come out of my mouth?
Yeah.
That's really not how I what I wanted to say. But now you're getting into the subtler body. You know, we have a physical body and our subtle bodies, which energy fields that move out from us. So now you're getting very esoteric. But that's part
Yeah.
of the expansion of the human consciousness.
Right. But how far are we into this? Oh wow, 35 minutes. Holy shit, we did it.
Yeah?
Yeah, we ripped through that. That was a good conversation. I mean, really just, well, let's ask a question, see where this goes. I feel like that went very well.
Yeah, cool.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Thanks for the info, Mom.
You bet. Did it make sense?
I think so. I mean, I feel like this is how these conversations normally go.
Did I move around too much?
I don't think so.
Okay, good, because I tend to talk with my hands.
Well, it's easy to... Oh, that's what you mean, moving around. I thought you were talking about the actual, like,
No, the
dialogue.
conversation. No, I thought the conversation.
Oh, and yeah, no,
worked.
the conversation flowed great. But
Yeah.
I don't think, like, you were moving around too much. That's
Okay.
fine. It's okay to be engaging.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Cool.